Listen to this episode if you are unsure of what an actual social media strategy really looks like. You know, I talk about strategy a lot, but something that I very often hear is, Maddie, what the heck does a strategy even mean? You know, it's really hard to fully wrap your head around it when you don't actually have it. What does it entail? Am I missing something? You know, is there a piece of this puzzle that I am supposed to be doing that I'm not? Especially when it comes to social media marketing. It actually is a much deeper ballgame than what you actually might be thinking. Before you know fully what a social media strategy is, it might actually be hard to fathom how do you even go about having a social media strategy. Today, we are going to be discussing a full checklist of what it means to have a strategy on social media and what brands that are organized and structured and strategized are really doing to be successful behind the scenes. Now, as a backstory, I used to be a social media manager for many product-based businesses. I also now have worked with over 500 product-based businesses on a consulting lens. I also work in the behind the scenes as a fractional CMO of many of your favorite brands. I also have seen the behind the scenes of many brands that are in Sephora, Ulta, Target. I see their data, I see their systems, I see their organization. And today we are pulling back the curtain and we're basically saying, this is what the brands that are winning are doing. This is what it really looks like to have a social media strategy that works, that converts, that you feel confident in, that is actually going to help scale your business. Stick around to the end of this episode and we're going to talk about passive sales. We're going to talk about what a full checklist really is that you have to follow. We're going to talk about, the items that are often forgotten, misconceptions around social media marketing. What are the major pieces of a strategy? Talking about those passive sales systems. And of course, what do you do if this feels a little overwhelming right now? Because for many of you, just to preface, this episode may feel a little overwhelming, but that doesn't actually have to be that way. It's actually much more simple to have a strategy than to just wing it. It's going to feel much better on the nervous system, I promise. So if you are trying to build a product-based business, a consumer brand on social media, this will be helpful for you today. If you've been posting for a while, but the traction feels like much slower than it's supposed to, or if you already have a brand, but want to ensure that you actually do have the full each step of a strategy, this will also be helpful. If you are trying at all with any sort of social media strategy, this is going to be helpful to either teach you what it is and teach you how it actually feels, maybe to make sure that you have every piece to it, or maybe just to find that final piece of the puzzle that you might not be thinking about from there. I'm really excited about this episode. Make sure that you stick around to the end and we'll definitely talk about the passive sales systems and my chutes and ladders kind of framework here to make sure that you have people able to buy from you every single day through social media. If you're new here, I just want to take 10 quick seconds to say hello. My name is Madison Page. I am a consumer brand growth specialist, meaning if you sell a product direct to consumer to customers, I am your gal. Today, we are talking all about social media strategy, but we also talk about profit. We talk about mindset. We talk about balance. We talk about being an entrepreneur here. So if that is up your alley, make sure that you follow along. My name is Madison Page, and I am truly so happy to have you here. Social media strategy actually can't be the first thing that you do in business. There are some things that you must build before you should even really be marketing, which I hope you already have. If you do have a social media profile out there and that you have been marketing, it's really more so phase 2 with my clients. Phase 1 is we make sure that their foundations are set. So I do just want to set that scene really quick because I do want you to know that there are some prereqs to doing social media. And I know some people don't have it. Many people come to me and don't. I just want to say that honestly, it's never too late to start. So don't feel like you're behind on any of this. It's never too late to actually start doing any of these things. So if you're getting halfway through this episode and you're like, oh my gosh, Maddie, I have none of these things, that's okay. We'll tackle this together and we can always implement it no matter what stage of business that you're at. I literally implement some of these pieces with brands that are building a $50 million business that like already have millions of dollars in sales, already have a full team. We still sometimes go in and tweak some of these pieces. So these are some things that you can build whenever you want, but this is how you're going to have the most effective and the most efficient social media strategy. So kind of talking about phase one before we actually get into social media, some prereqs that you do need here are basically the foundations in my 4P framework to getting to consistent sales through social media. I call this the pillars. The pillars is number one. It's basically the foundational elements. You need a deep knowledge of your ideal customer, because without that, you really can't market well. You need an in-depth and complete brand outline with colors, fonts, vibes, logos, feelings, and just like the overall aesthetic that you're going for. And most importantly, you need a differentiator. You need to know what makes you different. You need to know what messaging you're using to explain what makes you different. And you need to know how you're positioning your brand within your industry to say, these people are making this. I might be making something similar, but this is how mine differs. You basically need to understand who your brand is at the core. I have a close friend of mine right now that is starting a brand. And the first thing that we did is I said, who are you selling it to? What makes it different than what's out there? And what are the vibes that you really want for it to look like? What is the message? What is the solution? And before we even are marketing, we're creating a brand deck. We are, doing research on some of these ideal customers. We are making sure that there's nobody out there kind of using the messaging that they are going to be utilizing. You basically need to know the ethos of your brand before you can really market. Otherwise, your marketing will just fall flat. If you feel like your marketing is just speaking into the ether, if you're really worried about saturation in your industry, if you are feeling like you're literally just one in a million, it's probably because you don't have these foundations really set. So I just want to make that known. You know that I like to give you kind of what the nuances is, but around business information, because it's really hard to say like a blanket statement. And just, I want you to have a full picture of everything. And so to have the full picture and to really be able to do social media marketing well, you need those phase one. I just want to make that known. The second thing is presence. I go pillars and then I go presence. When we talk about presence, of course, this is your online presence. And something that I say very often is I can truly tell on your social media at this point in my brand and in my business, in my life, in my career, I can tell within 10 seconds if you are making sales on your social media or not. If it's converting, I basically can kind of tell how many sales you're making just by what these next stages that we're talking about really look like. We really want to make sure that each of these phases, both internally and externally, are set up to allow for the customer to feel really good, as well for the brand to really operate pretty seamlessly. The goal of social media is not just an actual overall sales engine. One of the major mistakes that I see people make on social media is that they think everything just leads right to sales. They think every single post should be a selling post. Every single Instagram story should have a link in it showing the product. They think everything in marketing in general is just parallel, and it's just marketing channel to checkout, marketing channel to checkout. But when in reality, social media marketing is actually a process. Social media is more of the home of your community than it really is fully a sales channel. It is a sales channel. Don't get me wrong. It is where many of my clients build their largest sales channel, but I want you to think of it as more of the home of your community. It's where people are finding you. It's where they're being nurtured into your community. It's where they're buying from you the first time, but it's also where they're being re-nurtured, reconnected, where they're learning about how to use your product when they do own it. And it's where they come back to actually buy from you again and again and again, because that's the ultimate goal, is to have really great retention. And so it's not all leading to sales, but everything is incredibly intentional and strategic. If you take nothing else from this episode today, I want you to take the point that literally every move that brands are making is intentional on social media. You would actually be shocked the amount of time that I spend talking about tiny little details of things. It's because you hear me say this all the time, that the disruption is in the details. The next disruptive brand is the one that really understands the details that should be obsessed over, and the ones that aren't a really big deal. Some things that you put out on social media are for attraction, for growing your audience. Some things are for nurturing. Some things are for selling. Some things are for systems to move them deeper down your buying process. Some things are to get people to re-buy from you. It's just a nurturing point of the people that have already bought from you, and you're teaching them part of this process. But literally, absolutely everything you post is intentional. So right now, if you're just whipping up content and it isn't actually intentional, you're not like clicking that post button knowing, what you're really supposed to be saying here, what this means. It probably tells me that you're not actually thinking about social media as intentionally as possible. Using social media as a brand versus as a customer is two totally different experiences. You shouldn't just be whipping something together and putting a cute little quippy, phrase on it. That's not what social media marketing actually is. Social media marketing is understanding, what do we do to get people to find us? What do we do to get people to really like us and trust us and connect with us? And what do we have to do in order to get people to our website? And then we have to let our website kind of take the reins there and make sure that we have our website super optimized to fully convert them. And so social media really is this home of your community, and it's where people find you. It's where people get nurtured. It's where people go to even just learn about your brand in general. 50% of customers in 2026 are using social media to vet a brand before they actually buy from you. 50%. So that's 1 in every 2 customers in the world is using social media before clicking the purchase button. And so we have to make sure that yours is set up to convert. Are you proud of it? Are you sure that it's actually moving people deeper into the cycle? And today we're making sure that you really do have that full spectrum of strategy on your social media to make sure that it is. I really want you to make that mental shift that social media is not just a sales engine. You're not using it like you're standing at a farmer's market and you're selling to people. You should be using your social media to actually live out a full buying cycle of your products, growing, nurturing, selling. Different types of content are leading you to grow. Different types of content are leading you to nurture, and different types of content are leading for you to sell. You know what type of content that is, how you actually execute it, what you need to say, and then what data you need to actually go back and look at in order to analyze it and make sure that it's actually working for you. So we're going to today talk about the external stuff and the internal stuff, meaning external is what I can see from the outside when I'm auditing your social media. These are the 3 things that we're looking at. And then the internal stuff is more the pulling behind the curtain and what you really need to have behind closed doors, because there actually is a lot of organization that goes into social media. So first things first, we're going to talk about profile setup. The first checklist is that your profile needs to be set up to actually be a point of education in your buying cycle. We have to think about your profile setup and how your profile is actually utilized. It's utilized when people have just found your profile and they go there to stalk you, or maybe they heard about your brand from a friend, they type you in and they're going there to stalk you. Your profile setup is very often a form of like stalking. It very often is a form of information gathering. So what that means is that we need to have the proper information that people need at a glance in order to get them to buy from you. I want you to think of your profile setup as basically like a mini elevator pitch, a little mini, basically pitch deck that you are putting out there for people to say, is this a consumer? Is this a brand, that I want to really work with? Is this a brand that I really want to support? Is this a brand that I feel like is speaking to me? Is this a problem that I have? Is this a story that I really resonate with? And is this something that I am really excited about? That's what we have to think about your profile setup as. You have about 7 seconds to capture somebody's attention and to make them want to dig further. And your profile setup is one of the most important stages here. So one of the first things that I look at when I'm auditing a business is I look at their profile setup. I look at their bio. I look at the link in their bio. I look at their highlights. I look at their pin posts. I look at basically the overall setup of their profile. This isn't how their content is set up. This is literally the skeleton of an Instagram profile that is set up. This is stage 1. After I get your branding really set, I know your ideal customer. I bring a lot of brands to market, kind of a come to market strategy. Number 1 is your profile setup. I don't want you to post it all till your profile is set up with proper information of what your business is, who you are, what you stand for, and what problem you're actually solving. It basically needs to be the solid landing pad for people who have never met you, or if they see a reel of yours to pop up on their For You page and they click on your profile, they get a full overall zoomed out approach of what your business is, what you're building, and if they really like it. If you just have 3 random pinned posts pinned to the top of your profile of just pretty pictures of some of your products, your profile is not set up properly. Basically, someone with a social media strategy understands that all of these little mini pieces act as a different stage of the buying cycle, and they have a few objectives. They're looking at How can you communicate your purpose? How can you use messaging effectively to differentiate? How can you educate people on your brand and what do you really do? And can you basically give people this baseline elevator pitch to say, hey, come shop from us. Hey, come join our community. Hey, this is what we're all about. That's how I want you to think of the actual overall profile. Do not underestimate the power of pin posts. About 90% of brands out there do not have correct pin posts. Again, this is something that I do with a lot of my larger scale clients as well. And even brands that have been making multiple $1 million a year, we will change their pin posts and they will nearly immediately see an increase in sales from their organic social media platforms. I also want you to think of your profile setup right now is it impacts your ads. It impacts your PR. It impacts your influencer marketing. It impacts every other channel with social media in general, but definitely your profile setup, because people are looking at your profile and how it's set up when an influencer tags you, when you get featured in a major publication, when you are running ads. It is proven that your organic marketing impacts every other sales channel. And so if your profile is not set up properly, you probably have eyes right now that are just bouncing and you're either paying for it. You're working so hard sending influencers information, products, and, trying to get them involved in your brand. And then they post about you and then your profile isn't set up to actually convert them into a follower, isn't actually set up to convert them into, a community member. My clients basically fully understand why each word is being used in their profile setup, why each slide of their highlights, by each slide of a pinned post, they know how to explain their brand and their product, and their profile basically immediately communicates what it's supposed to communicate from moment one that somebody reaches you. I want your profile to be so set up that when people literally pull up your social, they're like, ooh, look at this brand. This is pretty cool. That's what I want your profile set up to do, because you have good messaging. You have all of the necessary kind of, pieces of the puzzle set up. There's a lot that goes into profile setup, but it's one of the biggest checklists here that you need to have intentional, because every other sales channel and marketing channel will actually suffer if when people land on your profile, they're going to bounce. Signs that your profile is not set up properly is that you feel like you are doing a lot of top of funnel stuff. You have eyes on your reels. You have influencers posting about you. You're in PR. You have top of funnel awareness. You have people coming to your profile, but you aren't gaining followers. You aren't actually, like, you might pay to have an influencer post about you, and then they post about you. They have 60,000 followers and you don't gain a single follower from it. That tells me that your profile is probably a little confusing. If you confuse them, you lose them. So your profile has to be incredibly clear. The second one is that you need to have an identifiable brand identity. I need to be able to basically take your Instagram profile and put it on a poster, and that people will still be able to understand who your brand is, what it is. And if I put it into a poster, if I put it into an email, if I put it into a website, they should be able to say, oh, this is that brand. I want you to think about like T-Mobile right now. When I say T-Mobile, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? Probably they're like magenta pink color. That's because they have a very identifiable brand identity. This isn't just colors, but that's just an obvious example. I just want people to be able to understand. You all know that one influencer that every time they post, you don't even have to look at their handle in order to see that it's them, that like who it is, even the brands. When you see that pink, what do you think of? You think of T-Mobile. When you see that red, like outline of a bottle, you think of Coca-Cola. That means we need to have this identifiable brand identity. It doesn't mean that you need to be perfectly curated. Perfectly curated feeds are not necessary at all. You don't actually need to be like an absolute graphic designer to make your profile just have an identifiable brand identity. And honestly, it shouldn't be curated at this point, but it does need to have a consistent aesthetic overall. It needs to be groovy. It needs to be 80s. It needs to be, bold. It needs to be minimal. It needs to be neutral. It needs to be in your face. It needs to have kind of this overall brand identity. The brands that get the best results have an aesthetic that their ideal customer can relate to or feel drawn to, or that separates them within their industry. One thing about a very saturated industry is an identifiable brand identity can be a major differentiator for you to separate you. Think like vacation sunscreen. Their brand identity is just very different than a Sunbum or a Copper Tone. They picked a totally different route. Some people go like crass with their marketing and with their brand identity, and that's to really stand out. Sometimes your identifiable brand identity can actually be the piece that helps you stand out because it is different than what's out there. Like Graza olive oil is a great example here. Again, we talked a lot about the it factor that some brands have in an episode last week, I believe. So just make sure if you are wondering about your brand identity, you can go and listen to that. I believe it was 430 probably. Go back and look at that one, episode 430. Basically, these brands that have a solid social media strategy, they need to have a brand deck that they're going back to. And basically that has all of the small details and the most important information, and that they go back to it to keep everything consistent. But to have a solid brand identity from the outside, you just have to be able to identify major textures, major colors, major, fonts or feelings or aesthetic that somebody has. Getting into some nitty gritty here. Now we're talking about content. Of course, from the outside, I can basically tell right now if your content is converting or not. No matter who your brand is, I can tell if your content is converting or not. I would love to audit your social media. I always allow this. Just DM me on Instagram, audit, and I'd be happy to audit your entire profile. My Instagram is at This Is Madison page. And literally, I would love to tell you on these 3 major things. Like I said, I can tell in 10 seconds on your social media at this point what's not working. And so I'd love to kind of send you a personalized audit. So just DM me audit, and I would love to do that. But content structure is where this gets a little bit deeper. And it's one of the first things that I look at when I'm actually auditing your social. If your content is just all about your products, you don't really have a strategy here. Posting pretty product photos is not enough anymore to actually have a solid social media strategy. Honestly, unfortunately, it did work in 2016. Just to post pretty photos, people would find it. There just wasn't enough brands on social media to really have saturation. And so you could post really pretty photos and people would love it. In 2026, you need to have a lot deeper of your content than just a pretty picture or a video of you making your product behind the scenes, or, you talking about your product. Everything cannot be product focused. Yes, you do need to talk about your product. Yes, you need to educate on your product, but it can't be 90% of your feed. It can't just be random behind the scenes content and then product photos. That's not a content strategy. A content strategy is not, just show my face to be more relatable, or to talk about mom humor if your ideal customer is mom. That is not a content strategy. What a content strategy really is, and for a checklist that you need content pillars that you follow for different purposes: grow, nurture, sell. Content styles you use for different purposes. It can be carousels, it can be, B-roll, it can be face to cam, voiceover, storytelling, graphics, things like that. And you need to know, how do we combine your content pillars and your content styles to actually put them together and saying what pillars and what styles help us grow, help us nurture, help us sell, and help us retain. What is that combination, and how do we put those things together? And based on data, you basically know exactly how to structure, write, and create a piece of content that does each of these. They either help you gain followers, they help you create connection with your ideal customer and build community, or they help you actually sell to them and make a sale. And then you need to be able to analyze it to see if it performed well by being able to look at data. Likes don't matter. Reach doesn't matter. I have client followers truly doesn't matter at this point in your content strategy. What I care about is what content are you posting, what are you saying, and what is actually happening when you put that out there. Hey, I've been getting some DMs that you may not know what I do outside of hosting this podcast. I actually work with product-based business owners every single day to help them grow and scale their brand. If you really want my eyes one-on-one inside of your business to look at your strategy, to look at your funnels, to look at your data, and to develop your next campaign or bring your business or your idea to life, that is exactly what I do every single day. I've worked with 500 plus businesses across 70 different industries to help them become the next household name in their industry. If you are craving a business brain, a strategic advisor, a data-centered, obsessed person to come into your business and help you bring your idea to life, I'm your gal. Come on over to my Instagram at This Is Madison page, DM me support. Otherwise, you can click the link in the show notes to apply today. Okay, back to the episode. When we talk about content strategy, I think this is actually the hardest part to actually wrap your mind around, because until you know it, it's hard to even fathom. What happens when you don't have a content strategy is everything is just kind of lackluster. It doesn't actually have messaging. It doesn't have depth. It doesn't have a purpose. You're just putting it out there and hoping that it works. And so, my clients know what's the difference between a feed and story content and what the overall objective is, exactly what they need to post to gain followers. They know if they post this certain type of content, it gains them followers. followers because we've seen it happen before and we see the data, and then they can replicate that. And so anytime that they need new followers, they literally just whip up one of these pieces of content and they post it and they gain some new followers. They know what messaging that they have to use to stand out in their marketplace to differentiate themselves and basically become their own industry. So market saturation doesn't really matter. They know exactly what they need to post to connect with their audience, to get shares, to get saves, to get comments, to actually build a community, to get people really feeling connected to you. They know what to post to make a sale on any random day. They know exactly the combination of format, messaging, and pillar to basically get people to their website to buy from them, no matter the day of the week. And think of how freeing that feels is when you actually have full control over when your sales come in. They know how to execute a launch or a discount, and they know exactly what they need to post in order to get the best results for those. They know the data to look at to identify what's working and what's not. They know how to test their content to see if that's something new that's kind of fun and that they're playing with. They know what they execute to get people connected and building community. And they know how to break down a post and see why it works. They say, okay, this post got 20,000 views. Awesome. I want to go in there and basically try to reverse engineer it and test it to replicate it and repeat it. Basically, they know what to post, when, and why it will work for them. No questions, no guessing. They basically get to understand every action that they're taking on social media, and it actually simplifies it so much. This may feel overwhelming to you, but it actually takes all of the stress and pressure away from social media. Why that is because the stress and pressure is because you're spending so much time that you probably don't really have creating social media content, and it's not working over and over and over again. And so how we actually remove that stress and pressure of content creation is that we basically tell you, post this, post that, post this other thing. Every week you just need to hit on these 4 pillars with these different formats. It just takes the mental load out of social media, and all you have to do is execute. If you are actually spending so much brain power figuring out what to post next, odds are you probably don't have a strategy, because my clients know exactly what they need to post. They actually have so many content ideas that they want to post 3 times a week. It's something I hear all of the time, is that once they learn these strategies, it's like, I have so many ideas. Can I post multiple times a day? I want to post 3 times a day because I feel like I have so much to say now in order to get it out to my customers. We don't want to do that, but it's something that they feel. They have endless list of content ideas, because once you have the steps before this, you have your messaging, you have your branding, you have the ideal customer, you also have the strategy, the pillars, and you understand what's happening, it actually unlocks a motivation in you. Because think right now, if you could press post on every single piece of content that you're posting and that you're getting some results from it, you're either going to make a sale, gain followers, or you're getting people closer to making a sale, wouldn't that be pretty exciting? Wouldn't you want to post every day? And that's why content can actually get really in depth, but it can get really easy. It actually is so simple. People often get overwhelmed when I talk about strategy, which I totally understand. It is a deep world, but it also is something that actually takes the mental load, the stress, and the pressure away from you in business. But that's really stage 2, I guess. Stage 2, that is the external stuff that I can see from the outside. When I'm auditing your profile, those are the 3 things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at your branding, I'm looking at your profile setup, and I'm looking at your overall content structure, basically trying to identify if you're even following any content pillars and if you know what you need to do in order to get certain results. Profile setup, visual branding, and content creation is what we just talked about. Now talking about the internal stuff. This might be something that you don't actually know, but this is what I know from operating my own marketing as well as helping many of these other brands. This is something that I build for every single one of my fractional CMO clients. If you don't know what that is, I basically come in to an established team that might have 1 or 2 social media people. They might have some email specialist. They might have a PR specialist. And I basically operate as the chief marketing officer, and I am helping them optimize, and I'm really leading the charge of the marketing efforts. And this is something that I build for them. Basically, what is the objective at each day of the week is what we have in here. We want to blend the marketing and the sales calendar. I do this in Notion. Some of my clients use ClickUp or Monday or any of those platforms. I don't care. But I want you to have an actual physical calendar that you are following so you know what's going on every day and we can actually plan things out. My clients right now basically have a promotional calendar done for the year, and it's February 2nd when I'm recording this episode. So understanding that they right now, February 2nd, know every time this year in the next 12 months that they're launching, that they're restocking, that they have a sale going on, that they have some sort of promo, that they have some sort of product push. And basically what we're able to do is reverse engineer. That's a sales calendar. We can reverse engineer it by filling in the gaps of the marketing calendar. And they know then that they're passive selling. They know each of their product pushes, their promotions, and their passive selling times right now and what that means for their content and how they have to adapt it. We'll talk about passive sales shortly, but basically what this means is that they constantly know what are they selling next? What are they pushing next? What do they have to plan ahead for? Because what you do right now in February is telling us what's going to happen in June or July. What we do now impacts us 6 months down the line because we have to take some consistency here, and that momentum takes some time for us to build. So that means in June or July, if you are not saying what gaps do I need to fill for the holiday season, you're thinking too far back. We really do have to think ahead here. I don't want to lose you because I know some of you are kind of flying by the seat of your pants, week by week right now. I get it. You don't need to have your content created, but we at least need to have our promotional calendar built out so we can plan it, so we can talk to manufacturers, and so we're not ever being reactive. We really want to be proactive. It's basically having some organization behind the scenes. They basically always know what their current marketing objective is and how to execute it. Are they growing? Are they nurturing? Are they selling? Are they launching? Are they passive selling? Are they active selling? What does that look like? They don't really have every piece of content made. Some of my clients do. I have clients that have content made for like weeks in advance, but they know what the objective is and what it means to actually achieve that. Are they trying to grow their audience? What does it mean to actually achieve that? And what can they expect? And they're analyzing the data to get there. They also know how to make sales at any moment if they wanted to, because they basically know how, and they can slip it into a sales calendar inside of their marketing calendar. And you can see that your content goes in phases. And I think this is the biggest piece that we have to realize is that my clients have phases. They have almost like campaigns. Sometimes they're in a grow phase and they're trying to just get a bunch of new followers because they know exactly what content they to post in order to get that. Sometimes they're in a nurture phase. They're saying, okay, I just gained 10,000 followers. Awesome. Now I want to nurture these people and get them really, connected to my brand and to my story. Maybe they have some sort of objectives. They get people involved. They're asking them more questions. Maybe they do some Instagram lives, or they do a challenge, or they do some other things. And then when they're selling, they're usually either doing a product push or a launch of some kind. Doesn't mean you have to launch every time to actually just make sales. In order to have consistent sales, you need to have sales coming in every day. So we have to be able to understand how we actually bring sales in every day. So, behind the scenes, these people have a calendar and they're tracking their pillars. They're tracking a lot of this data, and they're basically just scheduling out the topics, and they know when they're selling. They know what they're working towards, right? Like you always know, okay, I'm selling something in 3 weeks. Okay, I'm selling something in 6 weeks. How can I kind of set that scene for the selling now? The next one is data tracking. You guys know I'm obsessed with data. Data is like half of how my brain operates. Basically, when you have a social media strategy, they basically have systems to track what content is working and what is activating people. They know what data to look for in these different content pillars. So every piece of content that somebody makes that has a content strategy understands what the pillars are. What pillar is it following? What is the format that it's following? What is the data that we're looking for after 48 hours of it being out there to see if it was actually successful or not? How do we really analyze it moving forward? And they have a structure to basically consistently look at a few key points to make sure that everything is consistently moving and nothing is breaking. There's certain data points here, whether it be profile visits, follows, website clicks, saved shares, things like that. They basically have KPIs, key performance indicators, that they're looking at to say, okay, everything's working. Ooh, this is working really well. If 1 month it's 150 profile visits and next month it's 300, they know, okay, whatever we just did brought a lot of eyes, brought a lot of attention, and really activated people. Now we can kind of go and we can adapt it from there. Again, they also know what different data means about their customer, which type of buyer they are. I really hope you're seeing that everything has an intention. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a deeper meaning. When I am looking at your Instagram and I'm saying, ooh, this one had a lot of this one had a lot of that, I can see that this one really activated here, and then we can replicate it. When I say a repeatable marketing system, I mean, I want you to be able to basically just say the same thing in 4 different ways, in having different pillars that you're following to achieve the same result. Repetition is great in marketing. We have to repeat ourselves, but it can't get old. We basically have to say, okay, these are our 4 pillars. These are the 4 things that you're talking about. And this is what the major message is, and everything goes back to it. 2 more things. We're going to talk about organization, and then we're going to talk about passive sales. And then we're going to talk about what do you do if you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now. First things first is organization. The most important piece of social media is keeping this organized, because there are going to be weeks, especially if you're a solo business owner right now, that you just can't post 7 days a week. It's going to be weeks you don't feel like posting more than 2 days a week, but you have to be able to know what are your actual non-negotiables every week to keep things chugging as normal. So if something bad happens in life, or if you're on vacation, or if you just had a ton of orders, but you have to kind of still maintain, your marketing so the sales don't fall off in the future, basically you need to identify what are your weekly non-negotiables. So my clients have weekly non-negotiables. They know every week on their worst week of the year, what is the bare minimum that they need to do to keep their business functioning. So what that means is that they don't fall flat, because what happens often is shit hits the fan in life and in business. And then all of a sudden you're done posting for the week. You're like, nope, honestly, can't do it. But then your sales kind of tank for the next 2 weeks because you didn't market people. So we have to basically have this bare minimum and an understanding. What do you have to post on your feed? And what do you have to post on your stories to just keep business as usual, to not see a dip? Because every time something happens in life, or every time you're super tired that week, or every time you want to go on vacation, we can't have our sales dipping. We don't want our business to depend on your output. We have to be able to understand what our bare minimum is. These clients also have templates of go-to designs to go back to basically say, hey, these are the benchmark 5 to 10 different designs that we are constantly using that allows for you to not have to recreate it every time. They also have a library of photos and videos to pull from on these busy weeks, because you shouldn't be creating content of having to go take the video at the moment of. You should be having photos and videos that you pull from that are on brands that you already like, that you can basically pull from when you're creating content. Last but not least here, I want to talk about passive sales systems. We've talked about setting up your profile properly. We've talked about content structure, marketing and sales calendars, data tracking, organizations, and passive sales system. Passive sales is not something people often talk about in the product space. It's something I heavily talk about with my clients, because what I mean by passive sales is that every single day you are making sales without having to have a discount, without having to have a launch, without having to have, any major push of any kind. You have to be able to sell to people that are lurking, because right now you have dozens of people that you don't even know about, that know about your brand, that are looking and probably not buying because you don't have the proper passive sales systems. Now, there's more passive sales systems on your website, but today we're just talking about social media. People often think social media is just a place to announce launches, discounts, basically like being a memo to get traffic to your site. But it also has to make daily sales in order to compound, even without this launch or anything going on. You have new eyes every day, but they're probably not converting because they don't know where to go. Again, this kind of goes back to your profile setup. Your profile setup is stage 1 of a passive sales system, making sure you have pinned posts, making sure that you have your profile, your highlights, and they're directing people places. I'm very specific about this to my clients, is making sure that we are trying to optimize the efficiency of all of the eyes that they have. I call this tripwires. And I want you to think about the game that we played back in 2003 that was called Chutes and Ladders, where basically you're going somewhere and it has little chutes and ladders to get you to different phases of the board. That's what you need in your social media. I am looking for your tripwires all of the time, which basically means when people are going through your profile, I want little tripwires, basically little booby traps set up to send them to your website, to send them to your email list, to send them to a quiz, to send them to a frequently asked question page, to send them to a connection, some sort of community involvement, something or other. I want you in your profile to have all of these little things set up that you don't have to manage at all. They're already set up and they're already out there. Email funnels, quizzes, frequently asked question pages, that if they have a question, they're able to chutes and ladders. So all of a sudden they're stalking your highlights and they go, whoop, cool. This is where we're going. All of a sudden they're looking at your pin post and there's a call to action there and they say, great, let me go there. I do have that question. Ooh, I do want to be a part of this. Because again, social media is the home of your community. More people go to your social media than your website first. So we have to actually think of our social media as the home of the new eyes. And so if we have people stalking us, but they aren't getting call to actions, they aren't getting these chutes and ladders, you're going to lose a lot of people. And I would rather these people be stalking you and join your email list instead of buying from you day one, then stalking you and not seeing anything and then bouncing and then never seeing you again. You're losing people right now. They're literally bleeding out of your sales system. So we have to have these passive sales system are in. People are stalking. We just need to place things in certain areas. And so that's something that I also look at is that we have these systems in place. This might be, some of those things that I talked about, but a major one is the email list. A major one is your pinned posts. A major one is what's in your highlights. If you have these other intro offers, if you have an ebook, or if you have a quiz, or if you have any of these things, we need to be able to get people into these different phases by taking these different chutes and ladders. That is my checklist: profile setup, branding, content variety, and knowledge of exactly what to do to get a different result, blended marketing and sales calendars, data analysis, organization, and passive sales systems. That is what a social media strategy is. This is the checklist that you need to basically have a complete, true social media strategy. I'm sure there's some small things here or there that I could add into this, but this is really the big stuff. The key thing to note here that I hope that you've kind of noticed is that literally everything is intentional. The hook on your reel, the music on your reel, the caption on your reel, the actual background video. I mean, I want you to think about what you're looking at right now. I have a tree, I have curtains, I have lights, I have all of these other pieces. There was an intention behind it. Now, the intention here is just making it look pretty and making it look elevated, but it needed to look on brand. It needed to connect with me. If you're watching the video of my podcast, things are intentional. These things are sitting here intentionally because I want them to communicate a certain message for you. And so you have to think about everything on your social media being intentional. Look at other brands and try to identify some of these pieces here. When I'm a fractional CMO for brands, I help them edit their marketing and I'm in the weeds of the creation a bit more than when I'm just consulting. People are actually shocked as to the emojis, the words, the textures in a photo, the style of the videos, the shots that are in the video. Everything has a purpose because it's just one piece of such a bigger puzzle, because everything isn't just leading to sales. Again, it's not all just every single piece of content is parallel and it's just all pushing to sales. It's all working in more of a spiral. Some things are growing, some things are nurturing, and some things are selling. If this feels overwhelming for you right now, I hope it's helpful to hear that 99.99% of my clients say that social media got 10 times, 100 times easier when they implemented a strategy, when they actually understood how to utilize social media as marketing and not just posting. It gets easier because it's basically directing your attention. It gets easier because it's basically telling you just exactly what to do. A lot of the things I talked about, your profile setup, your branding, your organization, and your passive sales system, so literally 80% of what I talked about are things that you do once and then they're set up. And you might tweak them, but they're already just out there and they're working for you. So it's not something you have to actually manage every day. Really, the only thing you're managing on a weekly basis is your content, is your sales calendar, and you're adding things in there, and your data analysis. But your sales calendar is mostly set. Your data is just something that you check into to make sure. Once you know, it basically allows for you to just sit down and know what you're doing. I want you to think of the last time you learned how to do something. At first, it felt very labored. And I'm going to be totally transparent, is learning a content strategy is a skill set. It is going to feel labored. At first, you're going to be like, oh, I forgot to put that in the caption. Oh, I forgot. I do need that. And that's why oftentimes I'm here. This is why I work with people one-on-one. It's because I want to be there during their implementation when it feels labored, to say, hey, yeah, these are the little pieces. This is how we improve this. This is how, your Instagram stories have to be better. I want to be there through that implementation of it all, because that's why I don't think courses work, is because you get all of this information. And then you're just whisked into this really hard skill to learn. And then you're in this point of it feeling harder, it feeling labored, and you feel like it's wrong because it is just like burdensome at first. But if you can get over that hump and that we can make that implementation much easier on you, for me to basically just be giving you feedback and condensing how long it actually takes you to learn, then what basically happens here is you just have a checklist of things to do every week for marketing. It takes a fraction of the time. You don't feel frustrated. You don't feel overwhelmed, because when you know exactly what to post, what to say, how to make it, it just directs your effort. This isn't something else that you're adding to your plate. It's actually just making it more effective. Right now, you're spending the time on your social media. It shouldn't be taking you 3 hours to make a reel. What this does is it says, this is exactly what to make. This is what you should be saying. And this is why. Post it, and now we analyze it. Having a strategy is basically just like bumper lanes of a bowling alley. It basically is saying, instead of being able to go into the gutter and make all of these mistakes, it's just saying, do these things, and I'm going to bounce you right back into it. So, you really do only have 5 content pillars and a couple of different types of how to do it. We just put together these different kind of formulas. It's different for every brand, which is why I can't sit here and tell you the exact formula. You don't have to scroll for inspo. You don't have to question if what you're doing is working. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to waste 3 hours to get 11 likes and nothing actually coming from it. It's basically just putting these bumper lanes to tell you this is exactly what you do. If you're sitting here saying, Maddie, I actually have none of these things, I want you to take a deep breath. And again, I hear you. Don't take this as you're behind. It is never too late for you to implement them. Take it as a sign that using social media right now, you're not using it as a tool. You're using it as a consumer. You're using it as a person. You're not using it as a brand. And it's very different. You just haven't learned the skill set of it all. And there's a reason that corporate companies do have full teams of people to manage their social media. There's different layers to it as you complicate it. But it doesn't have to be complex for you right now. You just need the roadmap. And 99% of the time, when my clients take the time to implement these things, really take the feedback, understand what they need to do, it converts 100 times better. It takes less time. It feels less stressful, and they can actually enjoy it. If social media feels stressful, it's probably because you're spending so much time trying to figure it out. Once you know how to do it, it's just like any skill. It's actually really simple. Learning a guitar is really tough at first. Your fingers don't work like that. And then all of a sudden it's natural. It's easy. Learning to surf, you're going to eat it a couple times in the waves, but eventually it looks very effortless. It's the same thing as social. This is how you stop having to go to markets. This is how you have customers truly flocking to you. It's how you have opportunities finding you instead of you having to find them. It's how you are able to stay home and have sales coming in when you sleep. Social media is the best thing that has happened to entrepreneurs in our generation. And I know it might not feel like that. I don't think it's great for society. I actually hate social media personally, but as a tool for businesses, it's one of the best things that we have ever been gifted. It is a superpower, but it has to be done intentionally. It is not something in 2026 that can be wrong, that can be throwing spaghetti at the wall. AI has made it way too easy to post on social media and to replicate things. You have to really understand the marketing principles. What I want to add here before we wrap things up is that many of these things have not changed in years. These are things that I have been teaching since the beginning of my business 7 years ago. These are things that I was doing with my family's business 12 years ago. These are all things that do not change. The content and the styles of content might change slightly, but your branding, but your ideal customer, these are not things that are ever evolving. This is not a hack. This is you learning the principles. The only thing that adjusts is basically the trends of what's going on social media, which we can choose to attach to or not. Everything here just has to be done intentionally. You just have to learn the skill set and everything else gets easier. If you're looking to learn basically this entire system, I know some of you will be like, Maddie, I'm really feeling overwhelmed here. I have no idea how to do it. This is why I teach this. This is what I teach all of my PTP clients. Product to Profit is actually open for enrollment for the next 90 days. You learn this system, but it is working with me. It's a one-on-one hybrid program where I am there to help you in the process of it. I teach you exactly for your business what your pillars are, what your styles of content are, what your messaging should be. And I make sure that you have all of these systems in place to make sure that you can make sales every single day and you can basically build to have 6 figures and beyond online. We cover community and websites and wholesale and emails and all of that in here as well. But social media strategy is one of the most important skills that you will ever learn, because you can build a business really seamlessly and really easily if you understand marketing principles. It's a one-on-one program that's built really directly for you. So you get a custom growth plan. You get my eyes and my heart and my brain in your business all the time while you implement all of these things to make it where it isn't that difficult. If grow your social media has been on your list and this is the third year in a row and you sat down and you were like, no, this is the year I'm going to do it, but you still don't have a lot of these pieces, this might be your sign to jump into the program. PTP, I have put hundreds of people through this program, 70 different industries, and it really is a proven, repeatable process to know how do we grow, nurture, and sell. We talked about the 4 different stages of consistent sales. I talked about pillars, presence, people, and profit. Those are the 4 steps that we teach you inside of PTP. If that's something that's interesting to you, that you're kind of craving actual support in your business, craving an actual proven model, we condense time by making it where you don't have to trial and error. You could figure this out in the next 5 years as things change and as things adapt over those next 5 years. Yeah, maybe, but I can teach you all of it and more in just 90 days. I work directly with you. This is not you in a big Zoom room of 50 people. It's you in a Zoom room with me and maybe a couple of other business owners, 5 up to 10. It's a very intimate group. And so if that's feeling interesting to you, you can head on over to my Instagram at This Is Madison page, DM me PTP, and I would love to talk about it with you. Like I said, it's open for a very limited time. It will close on Friday and it will be closed for a while after that. So I just want to put that out there that if this is something that resonated with you, I think it's a great time to send you over there. If not, that is totally okay too. But if you're feeling like, Maddie, I really have no idea what was going on here, I know that I'm missing a skill set, and you want to go mass market, you want to become a household name, you want your business to be incredibly successful, make 6 figures, provide for your family, I can absolutely teach you how to do that. We do it every single day. I love you. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner always. Come on over to my Instagram at This Is Madison page, DM me PTP, and I'll send you more information. Otherwise, I want you to really reflect on some of the things that we said and what are the areas that you don't know how to do quite yet, and start there. I hope you have a great day. I'll chat with you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Growth Podcast. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. So if you love this one, make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss a conversation. If you want more conversations with me and other business owners, make sure that you join our completely free podcast community, the Founders Cafe. The link is in the show notes. You can get bonus resources, access to free coaching calls, as well as connect with like-minded business owners like yourself. Make sure that you rate and review the podcast 5 stars, share it with a friend to keep those conversations moving, and come back every Tuesday and Friday. I'll see you there.